Ladies and gentlemen, we got another interesting debate coming at you live today. Modern day debate. Thanks for stopping by. Please hit that thumbs up button if you like these types of debates. That'll let us know that you want to see more on evolution versus creationism. All right. First, I'm going to start off by saying thanks for everybody for being here, and we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome, that this is a community that we can all come to, that's nonpartisan, and so just try and keep it friendly in the live chat as much as possible. Wink, wink, right? So today we're going to be talking about universal common ancestry. So Jackson is going to take the position that universal common ancestry is a fact, and Smokey's going to be arguing against that. So since he'll be taking the affirmative, we're going to go with Jackson to open it up. I want to thank both of the speakers for spending their time here with us tonight. Again, if this is your first time here, we want you to feel welcome. Please hit that subscribe button because we have lots of other discussions coming up that are going to be really cool. Like, we have a lot of cool stuff planned. So with that, let's get started. Let us know in the live chat how the audio is and if we can change anything. And with that, Jackson, you want to go ahead and start off?
All right, and I need to screen share.
All right, let's see.
Can you see it?
You are good to go.
All right, then I'll start. Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me on. The topic of this debate is universal common ancestry. Last week, I debated this topic with Kevin Anderson from Answers in Genesis, and for a debate that was supposed to be about universal common ancestry, surprisingly little of our discussion was actually about universal common ancestry. Regardless, the arguments I'll present here are similar because the evidence is still there and still needs to be discussed. And again, just like last week, abiogenesis is irrelevant because the last universal common ancestor lived millions of years after. Philosophy is also relevant because we're talking about genetics and morphology here. The first argument concerns the fact that taxonomic ranks are arbitrary. Creationists reify taxonomic categories like the family because they have arbitrarily decided that a kind is about the same level, but this is meaningless. Families can vary in size from containing one species, Trichoplaxid herons is the sole member of the entire phylum Placozoa, to containing tens of thousands of species, such as the rove beetle family Staphylinidae. From here, I'll take a slightly different approach than I did previously. Does natural common descent happen? Yes, and this is easily demonstrable. Mutations occur in populations. Every human has over 100 novel mutations by the time they're a zygote. These mutations can be spread by various means: natural and sexual selection, genetic drift, and gene flow. Experiments over the years have shown that mutations can appear in a population and then be driven to fixation. The Richard Lenski E. coli experiment detailed a bacterial lineage in which a promoter region was duplicated and transposed to a different gene. Thus, not only did it generate a novel phenotype, the metabolism of citrate under aerobic conditions, it also generated a novel regulatory module in the genome, so no genetic information was lost. If anything, genetic information was gained, although creationists are very reluctant to define new information in a way that can be quantified, but when you give examples like this, they'll very quickly say why it doesn't count. From what I've heard from other creationists, it seems they won't accept anything as new information unless a gene popped out of literally nothing. Of course, evolution from common descent doesn't propose that genes appeared ex nihilo. That's creationism. Darwin's famed example of natural selection concerned the distribution of finches across the Galapagos Islands and their beak sizes that correlated with their food source. For example, Geospiza magnorostris has a large, thick beak for cracking tough nuts and seeds, whereas G. conorostris has a thin, conical beak for piercing cacti. That these finches are related by natural common descent from mainland ones is even accepted by leading creationist apologists, including Ken Ham's Ark Encounter. Another example, the water strider genus Ragavalia experienced a duplication of the gene mother of Geisha, resulting in the gene Geisha that causes the formation of novel propeller fans on the insect's legs. Unlike other closely related members of the same family, such as Stradulavalia, Ragavalia can move on fast-moving water thanks to these propeller fans. And researchers showed that the fans still provided a movement boost even when reduced, indicating that the fans were adaptively beneficial at all stages of their evolution. Next, the crawfish Procambarus phallax underwent a whole genome duplication event in the 1990s, resulting in the new marbled crawfish Procambarus virginalis. Though P. virginalis is now totally asexual, males of P. phallax still attempt to mate with the other species with no success. Per the general biological species concept, speciation has occurred. In essence, we have witnessed every stage of natural evolution on local scales: mutation, selection, and speciation. That's the whole game as far as the theoretical underpinnings of natural evolution are concerned. So the question is this: do we have reason to believe these mechanisms unite all life on Earth? I would argue yes. I chose hummingbird as my start last time, which was never refuted, but I'll choose a different starting point here. How about horses? The modern domesticated horse, Equus equus, has a single toe that composes its hoof. The Miocene Merychippus, however, has one large toe with two highly reduced dangling toes flanking it. The Oligocene Mesohippus has 3 toes on the front and back feet. The Eocene Epihippus has 4 toes on the front feet and 3 toes on the back. And the early Eocene Hyracotherium has 4 toes on the front and back feet. Now, either this is a naturally evolving lineage in which the toes gradually reduced over time, or the allegedly intelligent designer created successive groups of horses. It should be noted that even YACs like Todd Wood and Kurt Wise accept this entire sequence, and the Ark encounter shows the transitional genus Dinohippus as the representative of the horse kind in their display. So if any creationist still tries to reject the horse sequence, they're doing so in defiance of their own side's current argument. Once you get to the base of Perissodactyla, though, things become difficult for any creationist attempting to draw arbitrary lines. The earliest horses, rhinos, and tapirs are nearly identical, being differentiated by little more than the shape of their teeth. Why should all members of Equidae be unrelated to rhinos and tapirs when their ancestors share such obvious similarities? Moving outward, the primitive phenacodontids are the closest relatives of Perissodactyls, with the same ankle configuration, but having a long, heavy tail like earlier mammals. You can see there's a problem for creationism here, which so far they have resolved by ignoring it. The more taxa are included, the worse things get for creationist line drawing. A sister to Perissodactyla is Artiodactyla, the even hoof mammals, and together they form Euangulata. Artiodactyls are united by genetics like Perissodactyls, as well as morphological characters such as their unique astragalus ankle bone, which is also present in the earliest whale ancestors. Early representatives of the hoof mammals have been identified in the fossil record, such as the omnivorous Criacus, who possess the unique inner ear characteristics of ungulates. And genetics shows that ungulates are the sister group of Ferae, including carnivorans, the dogs, cats, bears, and seals, as well as pangolins, forming the clade Feraeungulata. This clade is sister to bats, and all the aforementioned clades are sister to Eulipotyphla, containing shrews, moles, and hedgehogs. And all animals with hair, lactal memories, and 3 middle ear bones are more closely related to each other than to anything else. You can go through the same process for all of life until everything is connected. If they were created separately, then there should be some easy divide between the created groups, ones which creationists would be most anxious to show. However, there is none. And whenever creationists do try to include more of the data, as with the horses, all they do is confirm the very common descent they were hoping to deny. There is no universal genetic or morphological character that delineates species, genera, families, etc., only a spectrum of overlapping features. This is the rule, not the exception. We can look at any phylogeny and attempt to draw lines of separation, but this is totally arbitrary. Even creationists don't only use the family level, as exemplified by Gene Leitner's Mammalian Ark Kinds paper. They can go up to the order level, as in Scandentia, or down to the subfamily level, as in Bovinae, Caprinae, and Antilopinae, or even a single species, as in Thylacinus cynocephalus. This shouldn't be the case if the kinds were created separately. Kinds should be easy to delineate and shouldn't all fall into a nested hierarchy of characters. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that. We're going to kick it over to Smokey Saint. You ready?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep, hear you fine. You need a, do you need a screen share or anything?
No, just, no, I have something I just prepared here.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, that's fine, no problem. Yeah, I think it kind of aligns what I was thinking it was going to go anyway. And thank you, Jackson. Appreciate it. I'm glad we were kind of on the same page for the topic of the debate. So we were, debating the right thing. So that's awesome. So very cool. Sincerest thanks to my opponent. Thanks, Jackson. Appreciate you being here. Converse contender, thanks for filling in, being here as well. And of course, thanks to the whole modern day debate community. Love all you guys. I am certainly happy to be here to exchange our ideas and perspectives on this topic, and I do hope and pray it is profitable for all. To try and break this down to its lowest common denominator, we have before us a competition of worldviews, each vying to promote itself as the most reasonable explanation to the nature of our universe and the origin of life. Each model claims to hold the higher ground for logically sound dissection of the nature of reality, yet which is genuinely the most logical, plausible, and probable? The nature of our universe is clear to us in the way that we perceive the uniformity of natural laws. Considering these natural laws should always be included in our consideration of scientific observations and the philosophical hypotheses that flow from them. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that everything that we see in the universe goes from a state of minimum entropy to a state of maximum entropy. Everything in our universe winds down, and this is scientifically predicted with the inevitable heat death of our known universe. This carries into the very information that codes our genes with genetic entropy. As information is copied over time, the information will degrade over time. We commonly recognize this degradation in information as mutations, and this is claimed to be the primary mechanism that powers naturalistic evolution. Yet, the claim seems contradictory on its face, and perhaps my opponent can help reconcile this for us. Naturalistic evolution theory tells us that a degradation of information over time, or mutations, will manage to increase functionality instead of decrease it, when scientific observation tells us that the vast majority of mutations are detrimental or fatal. Additionally, all animals come pre-programmed with error-correcting code to mitigate and minimize the number of mutations, which means the genes themselves are working against the primary driving force of the naturalistic evolutionary paradigm and seem to very rarely cooperate with anything actually beneficial. Additionally, we know that genomes that get watered down too far with too many mutations or too much speciation will more likely go into a genomic meltdown rather than evolve new gene information to avoid such extinction events. We even see this present day with the selective breeding of certain dogs, which inevitably leads to watered down genomes with far less informational integrity than its ancestor and will generally be prone to a slew of health defects and a likelihood of extinction. Not evolutionary survival by adding only more errors on top of the errors passed down from the parents. The naturalistic component that has been forced into the scientific realm actually flies in the face of scientific observation, in my opinion. This does not read to me as science, as so many claim it to be, but a wide body of scientific observations mixed with unjustified religious conjecture that runs contrary to reasonable logical conclusions. Perhaps my opponent can shed light on this for me tonight, how we are supposed to assume error on top of error equals improvement when we have observable normative examples to the contrary. It is the equal misfortune to both worldviews that we are not able to look at the actual genomes of ancient and extinct species so that more refined hypotheses could be constructed and considered, but we are stuck with only being able to discern ancient speciation through the observation of the morphology of the organism. Essentially, we have dug up a bunch of dead animals, compared their features, and composed a phylogenetic tree tracing back to common ancestry. This actually requires two primary assumptions that I notice. Number one, all life has common ancestry and did not emerge independently, and number two, common features more likely point to common ancestry. Yet, we have examples in nature that seem to invalidate both of these assumptions that are at the core of the naturalistic evolutionary model. There are many biological examples that completely defy the assumption of common ancestry being normative enough to rely upon for sound hypothesis. One example is the squid and the octopus. Studying the genomes of these animals has shown no discernible common ancestry with all of other life on Earth, so much so that some biologists have conjectured that they may have been dropped here by aliens. This is quite a claim that seems bizarre considering that the octopus and the human have nearly identical visual hardware. This would mean, according to the evolutionary model, the hypercomplex and specific eyeball that we both share managed to independently evolve with near identical function and structure in two different species with no phylogenetic relationship. Biologists have long considered the nightmare of trying to understand how our irreducibly complex visual organ could have evolved, but now it needs to have done it at least twice independently in these two species. A second prime example to defeat these naturalistic core assumptions is the evolutionary pathway of the ratites, or flightless birds. A long-standing assumption in the evolutionary paradigm was that all the flightless birds, such as ostriches, emus, kiwis, rheas, and cassowaries, as well as the extinct moas and elephant birds, all descended from a common flightless bird ancestor. This was assumed based upon the standard model of classification through morphological traits in the species, which is exactly how we discern the ancestry of fossilized specimens. Yet this was actually proven false once the genes of these animals were finally analyzed. Apparently, all of these birds that were assumed to have descended from a single flightless common ancestor actually came from three different and independent lineages. One lineage for ostriches, one for emus, and one for kiwis, rheas, and cassowaries. This means that not only did these three independent lineages lose flight, but also developed identical features, such as absence of keels in the breastbones, smaller, simpler, and fewer wing bones, bigger leg bones, and non-aerodynamic feathers. Instances just like this are commonly referred to as evolutionary convergence. Basically, this is the tendency for completely unrelated species to develop near identical traits or organs with no traceable common ancestry. This is very important because this is not a rare occurrence. And if it is not a rare occurrence, there is no way we should reasonably be relying upon morphology to assume common ancestry or common descent. Evolution is supposed to be utilitarian, keeping what is useful, discarding what isn't. But this is just not what is consistent with observation of nature. The emergence of traits and evolutionary convergence cannot be explained in any naturalistic paradigm and ultimately defeats the core assumption of the model itself. And I yield.
All right, thanks so much for that. We'll just open it up to a open discussion, and then we'll kick it off to a Q&A in about 30 minutes or so, maybe 40 minutes. If you have any questions for the Q&A, they've already started coming in. You can either send a super chat in, which I'll push to the top of the list, or you can tag me at Converse Contender, and I will add it to the list. Thanks so much.
Cool. Okay, I guess I'll kick it off. Sure. Okay, you equated mutations generally with degradation. That's just factually incorrect, and I provided two examples in which that's factually incorrect in my opening statement. I provided both the example of Ragavalia, the water strider, as well as the example of Procambarus virginalis, the crawfish. In Ragavalia, you have a mutation, which is a duplication event of the gene mother of Geisha, which results in the gene Geisha. And Geisha is responsible for the fans, which are on their limbs. That's a mutation, or it's a set of mutations, a duplication followed by a neofunctionalization of a gene that already existed. But it's neofunctionalized, so it has a new function. So now it's called Geisha. Geisha is like the Japanese fans, because it now forms these fans, right? I think you would agree with me in saying, I would assume I think that a duplication and neofunctionalization is not a loss.
We might be talking over each other a little bit.
Well, would you say that's a loss? Please clarify.
It's a degradation, I would say. Still, it's
how is that a degradation? How is?
Because it's a divergence of the integrity of the original information. It's.
But we still have the original.
Yeah,
the original still works. We now have a new thing. We have a totally new structure built on because of a gene that previously existed. It got duplicated. It's neofunctionalized, so it's doing something new now. And now this is providing an adaptive advantage to these Ragavalia, these water striders.
Right.
I can just say water strider. These water striders, because now they can inhabit a new environment which their close relatives, like Stridulavalia, cannot. So this is an adaptive advantage caused by a duplication and a neofunctionalization. How is that a degradation?
It's because it's a divergence of the integrity of the functionality of the original information. Here's the problem: if you have that duplication,
but it still functions. The original still functions.
Of course it does. Yeah, no, I'm just saying. No, you're trying to take it, I think, too literally. Because usually I think when you hear probably an argument in creationists talking about the information, they're talking about like the actual decrease in the information itself, like things are getting clipped off type thing. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the entropy of the information itself, the actual expression of the information. Now, in the information theory, there is information outside of just the values you're seeing. The values you're seeing need to be given a value by a language, and that language is information, but it's abstract. It's not something we can see. It's not something we can always discern. It's the only thing that represents itself inside the organism. So when you have that duplication event, that makes it functional. Well, there's something inside that abstract language that makes it functional. Otherwise, it would be detrimental and cataclysmic. So it's what says, turn this duplicated gene into something that's actually functional as opposed to detrimental. But whether it's functional or detrimental still carries with it the genetic entropy that I'm talking about, which is a degradation of the integrity of the original information.
Okay, I heard a lot. Okay, so what I'm essentially hearing is you're allowing. You're okay. It's what it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to straw man you.
Oh, it's okay.
It seems like what you're saying is you're okay with this happening, with the duplication and neofunctionalization of this mother of Geisha gene for a new purpose. You're just saying that that's fine.
Oh yeah, I don't think I actually have a real issue with that. That's one of those things that happens to.
Well, debate over. We're done then.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I can. I mean, if we're really just saying that this could actually happen, and we have scientific observable evidence for it, there's no reason for me to not concede that point.
Yeah.
So, but it's not really answering my primary objection to the model. And this, I don't want it to turn into this one thing where we have this primary little point. Here's this one example, because here's the thing. I hear some naturalists, they say, plant a seed in the ground, it grows. Naturalism. Therefore, everything can be explained naturalistically. And here's the issue.
Well, I don't really care about naturalism as a total construct. Whether or not the entire universe is natural, God exists.
You adopt it
whatever
by assertion. Certainly indirectly, because the moment you say no intelligent agency, you're really only left with naturalistic process.
I'm saying I don't see a reason to invoke intelligent. But again, we're talking about if this is a natural process, or this seems to be a set of natural processes. Now, it could very much be that a deity created each genus, and then within this genus created a set of species who have neo-functionalized this gene. Now, that could certainly be the case, but that would require unnecessary assumptions. That would require a lot of unnecessary assumptions. Why would we need to invoke a designer? Well, if the species are related within this genus, right? So Ragavalia is a genus, right? And there are, I think, 3 species within this genus. So we already accept that. I mean, you accept these 3 species within this genus are related, right?
I haven't looked into it, so for the sake of the argument, I'm probably just going to have to go with you on that. I mean, we're talking about a species I didn't particularly look into. So I mean, if you're saying they can be traced back to a common ancestry of a common genome, and then they have had mutational changes over time, and that's traced. I mean, I have no reason to doubt you on that. And again, it's not really answering my point. So, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I don't really have an issue just disagreeing with that.
Well, that's where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to go somewhere with this.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so there's 3. There are, I believe, 3 species within Ragavalia, or at least there were 3 that were looked at in this paper. They compared the genomes of these 3 species within this genus. They also compared this genus, Ragavalia, to the relatives, its relatives within the family, within the total family Velidae. So it's the closest related species to Ragavalia is Stradulavalia. So it seems like you've got these genetic similarities between these species within this genus, and the closest relative of this genus, of these species, is another very similar water strider. So do you see any reason that they should be separate, or would you say that they're both related?
Well,
Would you say that all the genera, all the species within this family Velidae are related to each other?
Well, yeah. See, I don't think I have an issue with that. We end up reaching. Here's the issue. I kind of see, Jackson, is we reach kind of a critical determinator. Like seriously, like if someone had, let me try to make this a little clear. Like if someone had presented me, I think, reasonable evidence inside my worldview construct to discern that there was reasonable evidence to believe that dogs and cats had a common ancestor. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily fight
We can do that one if you want.
Okay. Well, that's fine, because I wouldn't necessarily fight it, because again, it's not really answering the primary issue. And like I said, we notice, I think, probably one of the best example for us in a real terrestrial level is the type of evolution where I think, and I talked to Erica, she kind of said, this is really essentially what evolution is anyway. Like when we selectively breed dogs, we can breed out lots of characteristics, and those characteristics will carry with them kind of their own mutations, and that'll carry with it into the species itself, and some of these will kind of drop off and dead end and not be tenable for survivable, but we can get all this massive variation from this one singular isolated genome of the wolf. But we also can see that there is the existence of convergent evolution. It's just out there, and there's lots of examples of it, how these things that are not connected, have similar traits. Now, evolution is utilitarian. It focuses on taking what's useful and using it, and taking what isn't useful and throwing it away, either by extinction events or whatever. So I'm trying to understand where you are connecting the dots. Besides,
I agree with you on that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was talking for a bit. I apologize.
I think there may be a lag between us.
Well, I also run a
lag
show,
between
so
us.
I'm used to filling air, so I apologize. Just jump in sometimes. I'm sorry.
Okay. If there is, then tell me. But okay. So okay. What I'm trying to get at with this is, it seems like you're accepting local relatedness. And my question, because the topic is universal common ancestry, is where do we draw the line? I don't remember what the mega classification is for.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah,
I don't remember which one it is.
In your opening, you kind of said, what did you say? You kind of said, where do the creationists draw the line for kind? Is that?
I understand you're not a fundamentalist.
No, I'm not.
Right.
But it's still. Yeah, but it's still an appropriate question for me, because I kind of get where you're going.
Right. So that's kind of my point. I think you don't accept universal common ancestry, correct?
Correct.
I mean, that's why you're here across from me.
Yeah.
So there has to be a point in the phylogeny of life at which you say, there it is, I'm cutting it, I'm not agreeing beyond this point, correct?
Right. I think perhaps to do that, it would require a specificity on me that I don't think the opposition can maintain. And
you don't think what can maintain?
I don't think you can maintain a contrary position. Just as an example, like you saying, can you draw a specificity on exactly what in our phylogenetic tree would qualify as a quote unquote kind? And I would say, I don't think we have enough observable scientific information to really discern that. And I would say, I don't think you do either.
I would agree with you on that.
In the terms, and just as an example, I don't think we really have a clear idea of what species are. And your example, you had mentioned.
Well, I agree with that, but probably not for the same reason as you might think.
Well, you had mentioned something really interesting that kind of stood out to me when I was kind of researching some of this. You said genetic drift. And that's an interesting thing, because that's essentially species crossbreeding, is it not?
No, that would be hybridization. Genetic drift is what occurs in every generation. That is the random distribution of alleles simply by organisms interbreed, or mating within a population. Gene flow is like when you have populations and they come together. Genetic drift is just the random fluctuations of different alleles within a population. If there's not a big selective pressure, having wisdom teeth, for instance. We're at the point now where if you have wisdom teeth, you're not going to die. You can just get them taken out. So whether you have the gene, or if you're in a developed society, in which case you can have them taken out. If there's no selective pressure on the allele for having or not having wisdom teeth, it's going to randomly fluctuate. It doesn't really matter either way, because you're not going to die if you have it. You're not going to die if you don't have it. So it's just going to be distributed randomly.
Right.
So that's an example of genetic drift.
So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a bit more sense. Thank you for that. I guess I think probably where we're probably going to draw to is that, I don't know if I want to bring up this. I don't want to bring this up just yet. There is a stopgap to me. There's a place where it seems untenable. And we know this because we just come across it in science. Like I gave you the example of the octopus. Like there's no seemingly explainable way this creature fits into, the phylogeny of all of the rest of life.
So actually, I looked up a paper. While you were saying that.
Okay.
And may I screen share?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm dumb. I'm not technology savvy.
That's okay.
I need to screen share for 1 second, because, and mind all the porn people, it is what it is. Is that the right one?
Yep.
That might not be the right one.
No, you got it.
Is it? Can you see the colorful?
Yeah.
You can see the colorful picture on my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so.
It's very
I happen
small,
to know that.
But yes, I can see it.
Oh, crap. Let me see if I can make it larger. Can you still? Is the screen black right now?
No, we can still see it. We can still see it. Yeah, that's fine. It's showing up.
You can still see it? Okay.
Yeah, it's showing up full screen.
I happen to know when you. Fantastic. Okay, so I happen to know that when you said that, or I find that to be a very peculiar claim, and I think I know where you're getting it, but no one really takes that claim seriously. No one takes the idea seriously that the genes for octopi fell out of space. That's like Wickramasinghe and his groupies.
Oh yeah, no.
And they're
I'm
just weird. Good
By
Lord.
the way, I'm Jackson. I'm not saying that's even really feasible. It's just the idea that they have no backtracking is so perplexing to the evolutionary.
Oh no, yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
That's really all I'm saying.
Well,
I
see, that's the
agree
thing,
that
because
it's
nobody agrees with
ridiculous.
it. Well, the thing is.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a quick question. Let me ask you a
Nobody
quick
believes
question.
that.
Real quick. What is more feasible to you in terms of a hypothesis? That the octopus were dropped here by aliens, or that they were part of a creation of God, of a divine?
I think both are equally unlikely, but
Really?
but what I wanted to show you was that, but what I wanted to show you was this. If you see right in the middle where it says cephalopoda, the green space, so you see nautilus, octopus, and loligo. The loligo is the squid, or a squid. Euprimna is also a squid.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see here on this tree, they sequence the genomes of these organisms, the ones that are in bold.
Right.
These are ones we have the most data on. See, it falls quite clearly within cephalopoda. I had never heard the claim that we have no idea where the octopus comes from. It's like been a member of cephalopoda for well over a century. I mean, I'd never heard this. This is clearly the octopus is a mollusk. It's a member of mollusca, and specifically cephalopoda. It figures here with.
No, I think we may
Go
be.
ahead.
Now, this right here, is this phylogeny? Is this morphology you're showing me, or is this genome coding information?
This is a current tree.
No. I know.
This is genetics.
Okay.
Genomics.
Okay, so this is genomics. This is not just phylogeny. So this is genomics tracking the creature. So the green one is that?
This is a 2018 paper.
Okay, and the green one is the green one in the middle.
Yes, cephalopoda is the green. Yeah.
Okay, so. But
yes,
I think that's
that's the group containing the octopus.
Right. So what was the common ancestor for that group? Because that's
I mean, the common ancestor was a cephalopod. The nautilus.
No. Okay, you're not understanding. All right, the squids, the octopus.
I mean, if you go back in the fossil record, you can see the. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying the squids, the octopuses, all the things.
Do what?
Yeah, the cephalopods. The cephalopods you're pointing to and saying these things. That was my point. No one knows where these things came from. They have no connection to any of the other portions of life anywhere on Earth. Like there's no connection anywhere. Like that was my whole point. Was this that those cephalopods?
Except they do.
I didn't use the technical.
Yeah, that's totally bogus.
Okay, well, what is their common ancestor?
They're members of mollusca. They're in the same group with snails and slugs and polyplacophorans and monoplacophorans and.
Oh, so they have.
Yeah, they're part of the whole. They're part of the total. The large group.
Connectors for that. They have genome similarities. They have genetic information.
Yeah, absolutely. They all have.
Or is it just phylogenic?
Yeah, we also have morphological similarities.
No, well, okay. See, here's the problem.
Phylogeny are based on genetics.
Okay, but here's where it falls apart for me, is because you can't, for me, because of the existence of convergent evolution, you cannot rely upon morphology to do this. You have to rely upon the genetics, the genomes. So if the genome...
That's what this is built on.
Okay, I get that. But then when I get to the end, the determining point, and I'm like, what is the common ancestor now? Now you're like, oh, now it's phylogeny. Now it's no longer genetics, because now we have to go to what it looks like. So
these aren't separate things. These are the same thing. You understand the phylogeny is based on genetics, right?
No, it's
the
based
genetics
on
is not
morphology.
separate from phylogeny.
No, hold on. That's just a false statement. It's based upon morphology.
Do you understand what this is? Phylogenomics reveals deep molluscan relationships. Let's see what they were.
Jackson, I think you're jumping over what I'm saying here. You have to. The phylogenetic tree is converged. It's based upon evidence of both It's both morphology similarities, and it's also genetic information, genomes. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I agree.
So now I'm saying, whatever argument you're making, you cannot rely upon morphology. You have whatever argument you have to make to me for it to be actually scientific and not just pure conjecture, contrary to the evidence of evolutionary convergence. You have to make an argument from the genomes alone. Then
I just did.
On the same page.
So do you want me to read
on the same page for
the
that?
paper?
For what? For what? For which part?
So you agree? So molecular investigations of molluscan phylogeny have relied primarily on nuclear ribosomal gene sequences 18S and 28S. And subsequent analyses of a combined data set 18S, 28S, 16S, cytochrome C oxidase I, histone H3 yielded similar results, namely that bivalves are not monophyletic and support values at most deep nodes are low. And so in this one, let's see, what did they utilize? I'm trying to... This paper that we were just looking at.
What are we? I'm sorry. I think I'm confused. What are we actually answering here?
Okay, so the paper that I just showed with the mollusks with the octopus in the molluscan group.
Right. Okay.
This paper compared. This is a relationships among major lineages of mollusca based on 308 genes.
Okay.
So they're using genetics to resolve this total phylogeny of mollusca, which puts octopi and squid in this group.
I would need to see the actual probably genome claim for that because I don't think I think
I'll put it in the side chat for you.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, because that then of course then the information I gathered was wrong. That they of course are very, very isolated and independent species. So they emerged with their complex, very, very human-like eye organs out of snails. Is that how that probably works?
Well, not out of snails. Snails are a close related group. That was another thing that I thought was a little interesting. The eyes, our eyes are sort of backwards compared to cephalopods. There's convergence, but it's superficial convergence because our eyes are different. With our eyes, the light has to pass over our optic nerve to hit our photoreceptors, which are at the back. That's why we have a blind spot. You do the trick where it's like you move your finger out here and you can't see it. So that's why we have that. We have that blind spot because the light passes over. Well, octopus don't have that. Their photoreceptors are in front of their optic nerve. So the light just comes in, hits the optic nerve,
right?
And their nerve. Sorry, the light comes in, hits the photoreceptors.
They're both incredibly complex and morphologically similar, though. I mean, you would still concede that.
Well, sure, I'd say that, but the fact that we both share these similar eyes isn't it's not confusing any researchers into thinking that we're that vertebrates are more closely related to cephalopods than to anything else. Because group that has a lot of different eye types, because eyes are very malleable. We actually, funny enough, we do actually share the same Hox genes for eye development that cephalopods do, but also that fruit flies do and that lancelets do. It's called PAX6. We all have the same genetic toolkit for making eyes,
Right.
which is one of the ways that we know, we're part of bilaterians and we're sister to their group.
Okay, and what makes
Do you find that significant, or?
I do, for the sake of shared design. I'm kind of hoping maybe you could give me an argument of a naturalistic mechanism to kind of explain that. That type of shared congruency and.
What do you mean? That's
because it does not make sense.
I don't understand what you mean. It's the same gene. It's the same gene in different organisms.
And how would they get it with no phylogenetic connection to each other? How would they have the same gene?
What are you talking about? We do have a phylogenetic connection. Cephalopods are a member of protostomes. They're the protostomes develop their mouth before their anus, which is why they're protostome. We're deuterostomes. We develop our anus before our mouth. But we're both bilaterians. We share a set of Hox genes, both us and squid and fruit flies and elephants. Okay. We all share a set of Hox genes, which have been neo-functionalized in a bunch of different ways. And PAX6 is one of them that we share. It goes all the way back to our common ancestor. Right. We do have phylogenetic relationship with them.
Well, right. No, I agree. I feel like the waters keep getting muddied here a little bit, because I think from your
in what way?
Well, because I think from your paradigm, when you are saying common ancestry and you're saying it with this like really definitive type of stance, you're saying it with like it's proven, and it's proven through morphology. And like, see, because here's the thing, if you can point.
Well, I haven't even used morphology yet.
No, I know, because you've all focused on local recent models. But like, that's not ultimately what it comes down to, does it? It comes down to those ancient creatures having a common ancestor, all popping up in incredible complex diversity in a relatively short window. In the Cambrian explosion, it's all 70 terrestrial phyla popping up all at once.
Wait, how many did you say?
70? Is that 70?
No. It's like 12.
Terrestrial phyla? Terrestrial phyla.
There were no terrestrial phyla in the Cambrian.
Oh, I don't think that.
So the Cambrian explosion occurred about 540 to 520 million years ago. This is all deep ocean. Right, all the organisms that are involved in the Cambrian are deep ocean, like trilobites, Pikaia, Anomalocaris. This is deep water stuff. There was like nothing on land at this point except maybe bacteria and some fungi. That's about it. Plants wouldn't colonize the land for another 100 million years. Arthropods wouldn't colonize the land for well over 100 million years. Tetrapods wouldn't do it for well over 100, like almost 150 million years. This was way disconnected from terrestrial life.
Okay. All right. So I actually have a paper here. I don't know. Well, you probably wouldn't believe it. I'd probably have to track down the actual source for it.
Well, I mean, it depends.
Biologists know that nearly all animal phyla, more than 70 known to exist throughout the Earth's history, appeared essentially all at once about 540 million years ago. Phyla are the.
What are you reading?
This is from Fuzz Rana, Dr. Fuzz Rana. He's a biochemist.
I've talked to him. Actually, I haven't. There's a paper by Irwin et al. 2011, which is on. I saw it in a Nature journal as well. I actually cross-referenced this. Here it is.
I'll pull up the reference here. I'll tell you.
Fuzz Rana was not talking about phyla in a Nature journal. I can almost guarantee that. But here is a paper by Douglas Irwin, who is actually
There was a separate article I found about it.
Oh, here's a paper I just posted on the side. It's by Douglas Irwin. It's on the Cambrian conundrum, early divergence, and later ecological success in the early history of animals. So this guy is actually a Cambrian expert on the evolution of life. The first, let me see if I can find it. It's been a while since I read this. Okay, well, here, let me see if I can post this picture for you.
So you're saying that all the animal phyla appearing, terrestrial animal phyla appearing during the Cambrian is a false statement. You're saying that?
Yes, the tetrapods, like our fishy ancestors of coming on land, that was like 400 million years ago. That was way later. The Cambrian is 540 million years ago. So this is way.
We're confusing things here now. I think, again, we kind of keep talking over each other a little bit here. Let me try to clarify again. Okay.
So here's a paper
Fish on land is not really, is that you're classifying that as part of the Cambrian, fish on land?
No, that's Devonian. That's way later.
Okay, thank you.
So
perfect. Now that's where we got screwed up. Okay, again, I was talking about specifically Cambrian. Okay, so I don't care about the fish on land. I'm talking about the sudden emergence of really complex skeletal features, respiratory systems, complex organs, all these things all emerging from a supposedly universal, simple, common ancestor into a wide, vast plethora of very complex and highly evolved, supposedly evolved genomic information.
So now, if I may, do you see this chart that I've pulled up here?
I don't see your screen right now.
Let me try that again. Let me see. What am I sharing at the moment?
I don't see
you had something shared,
sharing.
but I was going to say you stopped it.
Okay, can you see this? Can you see a chart right now in front of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this chart, these are a bunch of I don't think this might be all the phyla. Okay. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. It's a bunch. Well, anyways, this is a bunch of the phyla. Some of these are not phyla actually. Cephalochordata is not phyla. Anyways, so here we have a set on this side. Actually, and as you can see here on this one, yes, you do have a bunch. There was a proliferation of organisms during the Cambrian. However, they were not from nowhere, and they also didn't just appear in the Cambrian. We do actually have a number of organisms predating. We have fossils in the Ediacaran predating Cambrian ones, which are sort of like what we would expect if these things are descended from Ediacarans. And in fact, all animals share a common ancestor that was way, way pre-Cambrian. We're talking like 300 million years pre-Cambrian. For example, you have Cambriella in the Ediacaran, which is actually a relative of. You have the protostome branch, so the animals that form their mouth before their anus, and it splits it two ways. You have the arthropod group, the arthropods and their relatives, and that's kind of a bad way of putting it. You have the ecdysozoans, that's the technical name. They shed their skin, nematodes, arthropods, tardigrades. And on the other hand, you have this group called Spiralia. These organisms, this is octopus, earthworms, arrowworms, it's a lot of guys. Well, both of these groups would have been around pre-Cambrian, and a lot of them probably would have been pretty small and probably without skeletons. Although we do have some skeletonized organisms. Cambriella is probably an early member of Spiralia, based on its shell morphology and based on the trace fossils that it leaves. It has a radula, like mollusks do, so it's similar to them in that regard. We have guys like Eulingia, which are similar to panarthropods. They actually have these three. I'm trying to think of a way to put it. They're not fins. It's kind of like these markings, the impressions on their side, which are very similar to that of trilobites, or that what trilobites would later have. But this is Ediacaran, so they're not from nowhere. There were animals around, and they were probably pretty different than the ones that were in the Cambrian, but they were around, and we have fossils of them. Once the Cambrian does kick off, though, we see stem groups. There are lots of stem groups at the base of the Cambrian, things like stem mollusks and arrowworms and stem arthropods. And it's not till later in the Cambrian that we actually see the origination of crown arthropoda, crown mollusca, etc., crown chordata, things like that.
Okay.
I apologize for speaking so long.
No, it's fine. I kind of wanted to just go ahead and let you finish. Again, I don't know. Here's the thing, and now we went back to morphology again. And I guess probably just to really draw a bit of a line on it. Morphological arguments aren't going to work to explain this amount of differentiation in such a short period of time.
Why not?
Because it doesn't figure models to rely upon mutations and time frames. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. I mean, okay, let's take another example. Something
25 million years is a pretty long time.
It is, but yeah, and I mean, there's certainly
these are different lineages
argument over those numbers.
All going through it simultaneously.
I know there's argument over those numbers though too, Jackson, and I think you know that. I think you know there's ranges anywhere from 5.
Not really.
5 million. Yeah, there kind of is.
That was actually based on a faulty determination of where the At-Debanian boundary is, but well, it's been largely resolved in the years since. That
exact thing is exactly what I'm talking about. That is up to debate. Now you can take your position.
That science changes as it grows.
No, science will make observations and then science will make conjectures based upon those observations. And sometimes those conjectures are wrong. And this is one of those instances where conjectures are
science changes.
Debated. Exactly. So conjectures are being debated right now. So if you take a position inside one of the active conjectures, that's fine, but don't tell me it's something that's been definitively defined for us.
I'm telling you that the best evidence in favor of this is suggesting by the experts who specialize in this is saying it's upwards of 25 million years old.
That's your arbitrary position and desire to take, and it's fine. I would actually.
I don't think the rocks and the fossils are very arbitrary.
I would actually even give it to you. In fact, I would even give it to you, even the 25 million years. I still don't think you have enough time. And even with just the evolution of whales, which whales we have tracked down through quote unquote morphology to be somewhere within the 10 million year time frame of evolution from their land aquatic bear ancestor things of whatever they are. But this is one of those things that's been shoehorned into the assumption of the evolutionary
theory. What would be a good time scale for you then?
Well, let me just make my point and then I'll
why
answer it. I'll make my point and then you can kind of answer it. Is that for the whales specifically, is that they don't breed like bacteria. You don't have hundreds of generations in a really short period of time to pass on a bunch of mutations and changes very, very quickly. The whales are very large creatures. They're very difficult to quote unquote mutate successfully, which pretty much all large terrestrial creatures are, which is why they have a tendency to die out. But the whales, supposedly, with very, very low numbers of offspring, takes a very long time to breed and reproduce. There is not enough time inside the phylogenetic evolutionary timescale to account for whales. There just isn't. And it's just one of those species. Well, I just explained it to you. They don't breed, they don't reproduce the way that you see. This is one of those things I noticed that seems to shoehorn its way into the evolutionary theory. All creatures reproduce and mutate at the same rate, seemingly, or similar rates, or really close to it. And it doesn't take into account these components that might.
Oh, they don't. No, they don't at all.
Right.
They don't at all.
What I'm saying. So if you're going to draw the type of specific drawing, then you would have to. Otherwise, you're not providing evidence. It's just conjecture. And it's conjecture based upon a lot of morphology and assumption.
I'm confused. Are you taking the position that the whales are descended from terrestrial artiodactyls or
I would withhold taking a position because I don't think even science can answer that question because it doesn't make sense. If your answer is it came from the aquatic bear.
I told you, for instance, that the earliest.
Okay, if your
answer, bears.
Well, okay, Darwin called them bears. I don't know. You call them whatever you want, but they were some sort of aquatic.
Well,
type, whatever. They were some sort of aquatic.
They were artiodactyls. They were aquatic artiodactyls.
Right,
they were terrestrial even hoof mammals. And do you know how we know that they were related to both whales and to terrestrial even hoof mammals?
Because they have similar traits.
Do you know how we know?
Morphology.
They have the unique ankle bone.
Yeah, I get it, bro.
Of artiodactyl.
Not an argument. Convergence
then
exists.
What's the argument?
Convergence exists, so not an argument.
So your
the argument is that, you don't know. The argument is you have no clue where these species actually came from. But you're assuming naturalistic processes to define speciation when you do not have any.
Do you understand how researchers determine convergence? Do you understand how researchers determine convergence?
Yeah,
Because
observation.
I don't think you do.
Observation. We
Okay,
look
observation.
At we look at the characteristics.
If we're looking at, say, I don't know, what's an example? We're looking at the prehensile tail of like a,
Was I wrong?
of pangolin?
wrong?
No, not pangolins. Of
Because you kind of,
you observe everything.
made a statement.
So
You
I
kinda
mean,
made a
in a
statement.
relative sense,
You said, "Do
why
I
not?
even know how genetic convergence?"
I'm trying to think of.
So did I get it wrong?
I mean, that's in a very vague sense. Sure, you got it right. There, good job. But if we're looking at, say, platyrine monkeys and porcupines, which both have prehensile tails, they're not the same. We can look at their morphology and determine, yeah, they're similar. They're kind of similar in this one feature, but they both have all the characteristics which are unique to their groups. Rodents have a unique set of teeth. Primates have a unique set of teeth. They have unique pelvises and wrists and all these other things. That would be an example of convergence which is unparalleled. And so what I'm asking is, if you were to look at the early whales like Pakicetus and Nuhias, which have both the involucrum of unique to whales and the ankle bone unique to artiodactyls, how would you determine that it's not part of these groups?
The time clock doesn't fit.
I'm giving you prima facie evidence that this is related to whales.
You have 10 million. Yeah, I know. You're giving me again, bro. Why are you not getting this? I don't care about morphology. Morphology.
That's not an argument. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry for you too, because morphology can't be proven as a method of which to determine heredity. You just can't do it because you have.
Actually, yes, you can.
No, you can't. Well, you can.
Yes, you can actually.
But it's not coherent. It's just assumptions. It's just your religious naturalism getting forced into science. It's not. This is not science. What we've been discussing here in terms of your assumptions of common ancestry is not science. There's no scientific observations for it. What you have is the observation.
So what I'm hearing is a lot of.
What you have is the observation of some speciation events happening naturalistically through adaptation, which I argue is a necessary component in the design of all life, because without it, life would not be able to exist. So therefore, it needed to be there for the very beginning of life, this adaptation component, which you claim is purely naturalistically manifested. Now, I understand why you want to avoid talking about abiogenesis, because it's a complete catastrophe for you.
Because it's not relevant?
Well, it's relevant in one way.
And there's a debate about universal common ancestry?
Well, let me tell you. Yeah, exactly. Universal common ancestry came from probably a single cell, or at least an origin of cells, or a colony of cells, or whatever it was. But there was something that struck it off, and there was the origin of life. And you want to avoid it.
Irrelevant.
Because it's irrelevant to you, but you want to avoid it.
Because this debate is about universal common ancestry, not abiogenesis?
Okay. Common ancestry, sir, you are trying to avoid a topic you know you will lose, even though it is at the base of your argument.
Do you know how debates work? Like a topic is defined before you come to the debate, and then you discuss.
What is the common ancestor of all life? What is the common ancestor of all life?
Would have been some sort of prokaryote.
There you go. So now we're talking about abiogenesis. So
we're not, because abiogenesis occurred before the last universal common ancestor.
Where the prokaryote came from.
Well, then that's before the last universal common ancestor, and is thus not relevant to this debate.
Oh, it's not relevant to the debate.
Because it's before.
Is it irrelevant to your belief as well? Is it irrelevant to your belief?
You know what? For the sake of this debate, I will just say God snapped his fingers and life started, and then from there it proliferated. Now let's go back to whales.
Beautiful. Now you're a theist.
Let's go back to whales. Let's go back to whales, because you skipped that one. So, since we're going back there, I want you to explain to me how these features, which are unique to these two groups of organisms who are also genetically related, are mere convergence in these fossils. How is that mere convergence?
I'm not saying it has to be. I'm not saying it certainly is, and I'm not saying it certainly isn't. I'm saying you can't say it certainly is. This is the whole point of what I've been arguing straight from my beginning.
I never said that.
Clearly it is.
I am not 100% certain of anything. I'm not 100% certain evolution is true. What I can tell you is that the evidence indicates that evolution is most likely true. That's what I'm trying to get across
You're
here.
going to play the game with the knowledge claims now with me. No, sir.
Does that make sense?
You want to play that game? Fine.
I'm not playing physics or philosophy.
You are trying to play philosophical games, and I know you are, because now you're trying to turn it into a knowledge claim.
I'm not actually. I'm trying to get you to think about organisms, and you have so far not. Every time I try to get you to think about organisms, you jump away. I tried getting you to think.
No, I don't.
About Ragavalia. You jumped away. I tried to think about whales. Sir, you jumped away.
All of your arguments to support your case are irrelevant because they all ultimately rely upon morphology. Now, I told you there can be traits in different independent species.
No, they don't.
There can be traits in different independent species that are very, very similar that have no relation to each other. Now, if that is the case and that can occur, you cannot rely upon that as your primary mechanism of the classification of all ancient life. It's nonsensical.
Well, Lord,
it's based upon assumption.
One at a time.
Hold on. Okay, if I say, what did you say? We're out of time?
No, I'm sorry. I said.
Can we have 5 more minutes?
No.
I was about to make
no. You have time. I said one at a time.
Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, the point that I was going to make is that we can construct a phylogeny purely on genetics, right? That's what I showed you with the thing about the squid. That was about genes. They were talking about 308 genes. Dude. They were not basing it on morphology.
Bro.
What did you say?
You cannot get genes out of fossils.
When I talked about Pack 6, I'm not talking about fossils.
Yeah, now we're not, because you're the one that keeps jumping back and
with
forth.
Just the genes.
One at a time.
Oh, wow, man.
Well, because you keep asking me about these things. I'm sorry, you keep asking me about like the evolution of whales.
I've told you probably 10 times at this point that any of your morphological evidence is irrelevant. And yet you keep jumping back.
Let's pretend fossils don't exist. Let's pretend fossils don't exist, okay?
Okay.
Let's pretend fossils don't exist.
Sure.
I can still, with genetics alone, demonstrate that we have a Pac6 gene just like squid do, just like fruit flies do, and just like elephants do. I can do this at every stage. We talked about the squid. That was just with genes. That said 308 genes. Ragavalia is related to Stridulavalia. That's based on genes. They're members of the family Velidae, which is based on genes. Is that all okay? Is it okay to say that Ragavalia and Stridulavalia are related?
Yes, and it has nothing to do with anything I've been arguing for the last 15 minutes.
Then let's expand that. The Velidae is all members of Velidae are related. Are all members of Insecta?
Why are we still talking about really local speciation still? Why are we still
As I just said, okay, so Insecta
is this because
hundreds of thousands of species.
Is this because you can only justify massive speciation by minor speciation?
Would you let me finish? Are all members of Insecta related to each other?
Well, sir, I haven't looked into that enough to really talk into that. As in all
But they're all genetically related. Yes, that's all insects. That's insects and their closest relatives.
Sure,
I
would know the classification of tree or the like, because again, I didn't look into that. But sure, okay. What's the point in that?
Are insects related to? So is Ragavalia genetically related?
Okay, hold on. Let me backtrack. Are you saying, do I think all insects are commonly related?
Yes.
No.
By comments.
No.
Why not? Because we can show that they're all genetically related.
You see that they're all genetically similar.
What's the difference?
What do you mean, what's the difference? The difference is your assumption, sir. The difference is you assuming that tells you something that it actually...
So is it an assumption that Ragavalia... So is it an assumption that Ragavalia is related to Stridulavalia? That these two are members of the family Velidae. Is that an assumption?
That they have similar features, that they have similar information, even genetic information? Sure, I'll give that to you.
Genes. Yes.
Okay, sure. Yes,
wait, so are they related by a common ancestor?
I don't know. Again, I haven't looked into that particular part to go into this with you, sir, so I'm not sure. Why do you want to bring this up? You said you wanted to go to the whales. What was the thing with the whales?
Well, because whales, I mean, I can still say we have genetics which shows that whales are nested within Artiodactyla, so they're within the hoofed mammal group genetically.
Hey, you guys.
And that was actually one of the slides that I
We're
had. I don't have to.
We're gonna go for about another 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna kick it over to the Q&A because we've been running for an
That's
hour
fine.
and 5 minutes. So yeah, another 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna kick it over to Q&A.
Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe we could just move it to like 2.5 minutes, like closing statements. Then we kind of make it fair. And just
Yeah, if you guys are finished, what I like to do when I'm modding is just give each person a closing time. So
Well,
yeah, I mean, because we have been doing it.
Well,
for
he
a
was
while.
asking me.
Oh yeah, well, no, if you
Go
want to
ahead.
do
Yeah.
the whale thing, yeah, go
You were
ahead.
asking about the whales.
Yeah,
You were asking about the whales. So even without, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. No, go ahead and make your statement. It's fine. I'll go after you.
Okay, I was just gonna say we didn't even have fossils really of the whale transition until the 90s. So whales were still genetically members of artiodactyls, the hoof mammals, before the 90s. This the genetic sequencing came about in like the 70s, or late 60s, early 70s, and so that's when. And so once genetic sequencing was done on whales, it was determined that they were members of the hoof mammals.
Okay.
Is that significant to you?
So the genetic sequencing says that they have similar genetic information to these creatures. Okay. Yeah, I don't.
To hoof mammal, even hoof mammals, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you want me to do with that. Again, it's just a matter of shared information. There's shared characteristics and shared genes and shared information across all life. I mean, we're like what 70% similar to daffodils. Now
Okay.
you can assume, and it will be an
I think
assumption.
it's like 50, but yeah.
Whatever. You can assume that.
Well, see, that's what I've been trying to get you to work out.
No. Okay. See, again, this is.
Well, that's what I've been trying to get us to work out, because if we can test phylogenies in real time, right?
In what way?
We don't have to just assume that it's. So you can actually, and this was a study that was done like decades ago, where you take like something very short-lived, like viruses or bacteria, and you separate them. You induce mutations in them, then you separate them again.
Right. Oh yeah.
And then you can run.
Yeah.
You can make we know what their phylogeny is of this family, because they induce mutations in it, and then they ran the sequences. They took sequences from each of the family, or each of the little clusters, and ran them through 5 different programs, and all 5 programs returned the exact same the correct topology of this phylogeny. So we don't have to assume that this is true. We can literally directly test that genetic similarities imply relatedness.
Yeah, again, those particular types of considerations I would give you, but when you're trying to stretch it into assumptions that don't even match your own paradigm, your own time frame, then what you're doing is you're basically saying, I don't need to reconcile this issue. I simply need to be able to basically assume that we just have naturalistic processes that I haven't yet discovered yet. And see, this is what I said in my opening. I'm
not positing that at all.
Well, you have to.
I think natural selection is sufficient to drive the evolution of whales.
Well, you say
years,
that.
yeah.
To me, I don't see that from the evidence. Now you can say it's sufficient for your view and your timeline, but given the estimation of the $10 million, first of all, whales are incredible, bizarre creatures in the sense that they were supposedly, from the evolutionary paradigm, they were sea creatures, then land creatures, then sea creatures again. That's a heck of a lot.
Right. Life is weird.
Yeah, that's a bizarre thing to
I
go
mean,
through.
same with sea turtles, same with ichthyosaurs, same, they're weird. Tetrapods are freaking weird, man. But
they are.
Again, we have we have a large sequence of fossils, as well as the genetic data indicating that they're artiodactyls. So we have this congruence of data, both morphology and genetics, indicating the common conclusion.
Okay, I feel like you're saying something that has to be untrue. I feel like you're saying something that kind of
has to be untrue.
Here's the deal. You're saying we see that there's some shared information between a whale and, what would you say, a modern bovine of some kind?
Sure. Yeah, a cow. Cows, giraffes, deer. That's all artiodactyls.
Okay, so there's shared DNA. Okay, great. All life is shared DNA. That's fine. That's part of our paradigm too. Okay, so that's fine. It's not an issue for me. Okay, the issue is inside the model itself.
Why?
Or the whales. because of the time frame that you have for all the mutations you need to go from the Pakicetus to the modern whale in 10 million years.
So the fact
tall order
that I can show each of the steps within this transition doesn't matter?
By morphology, no, it does not matter. No, it doesn't, because it doesn't fit your time scale for your morphology, for your phylogenetic tree. So you saying I came to this conclusion based
that's not really how evidence works, is it?
I think it is. If you have contradictory
If
evidence,
we have,
your evidence is trash.
if you say,
if your evidence
someone
contradicts other parts of your evidence is garbage.
Except here's the thing, it doesn't. We have the genetic data indicating they're artiodactyls, and we have the fossil evidence indicating they're artiodactyls. The only thing you're saying is the only thing you're saying is that the time scale is off. Now, I don't think the time scale is super weird. Lots of organisms undergo transitions. However, whales still have their artiodactyl genes. They have the genes for smelling, but they don't use them because they live underwater. When they sleep, they have to turn off part of their brain. If these were designed, this is a screwed up design. They have the genes for teeth. They try to form teeth during development. They try to do the things that artiodactyls do, but they can't because these processes have been truncated in whales. Well, some of the processes, the baleen whales don't have teeth, but the odontocetes do, like dolphins and sperm whales.
I don't know what you're talking about whales not being able to smell things or not needing to smell things underwater. That's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. Even sharks.
They have the pseudogenes for smelling. They have the broken pseudogenes for artiodactyl nasal genes, but they're broken. Because they don't need them.
Okay, so you're saying
if you're a baleen whale and you're filtering. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. So just so I understand the argument, they have similar features of these other things that to them you believe are non-functional or non-necessary.
It's not just that; it's that they have the genes of their closest relatives, and you accept this on local scales. But I'm trying to get you to say,
right. I think
yes, these similarities imply relatedness, not just on local scales.
I don't know if you're answering my question.
What's the question?
So they have the
which is what?
They have the genome information for those olfactory organs, or they actually physically have the olfactory organs and they're just not used. Do you follow?
I mean, they have it's the blowhole, but it's not functioning in smelling anymore. It's functioning in
right. So it's not that. The information is there. It's just not used, type thing. So now, here was my original argument, which I was drawing to. You say that they have a common ancestor. You're basically saying the bovine and the whale have a common ancestor back to Pakicetus or something similar, right? Is that kind of the argument? Okay. So that's the idea because
the whale ancestor would have been more like Pakicetus, but yes, they do share a common ancestor. Yes.
So maybe something before Pakicetus.
Yeah, it would have been, but yes, they do share a common ancestor. Yes.
But we don't know.
Well, what exactly it looked like? I mean, there's like Hyopsodus, and there are a couple other little fossils of early artiodactyls, but what it exactly looked like, I don't know.
So is it
tiny?
Is it just as possible? Is it just as possible that it had come from a completely different phylogenetic tree than you speculate?
Well, the genes would have to reflect that, and the genes don't reflect that. Or we would have, having fossil evidence of some. I don't even know how fossil evidence would work in that case.
Well, I guess my point was.
But we'd have to have we have to have genetic evidence of that.
Right, and exactly. And I guess that's what my point ultimately boils down to, and you kind of nailed it there right for me, is that we need the genetic evidence. So without the genetic evidence to the ancestor, we can't know that they had that common ancestor, let alone the same common ancestor at all. If you can't pinpoint that they did have this common ancestor, then you are operating on assumptions. You just don't want to hide.
I don't understand your argument because I'm saying we have. You said if we didn't have the genetic data, how would we know they had a common ancestor? But we have the genetic data. That's how we know they had and we also, I don't really understand that argument because you're saying if we didn't have the genetic data.
Let me put it this way.
But we have it.
All all the actual evidence that I think, or certainly that I've seen, that I think you have, is certainly fittable inside my model just as much as it is yours. And see, all you're doing is assuming that all mechanisms that you don't even know about yet are actually mechanisms of naturalism or naturalistically done without any type of driving force or intelligence whatsoever. Now, that's fine, but all your evidence still fits my worldview of the same thing. And see, now you disregard abiogenesis as being essential to the conversation, maybe even your belief. I don't know. I don't really know where you stand on it. To me, it's essential.
Not irrelevant. Because I already conceded to you on abiogenesis. I already conceded you on that point, so it doesn't matter. Move on.
So can we just maybe?
I said fine. I said fine.
Okay, so we end the debate that God created abiogenesis, but after abiogenesis, everything came from some sort of naturalistic mechanism to basically turn into all common life. All speciation came from.
If you want to say that
God created.
If you want to that. If you want to say everything was natural after abiogenesis, because this topic was never about abiogenesis, then absolutely, we've agreed to my position. So fine, of course.
Okay. All right, gents, you guys
Whatever.
ready? Let's.
If you want to say that, fine. It was natural from Luca onward.
All right, so you guys, thanks so much for that.
Welcome to accepting universal common ancestry.
Yeah, I guess I guess so.
All right, let me give you guys 1 minute apiece to kind of.
By the way, I would give you common ancestry, and I think James Tour would as well. If you would actually concede God, I would give you common ancestry across the board, and I probably wouldn't even have to fight it too hard. Because the fact of the matter is that even inside that model, in my mind, there would be stopgaps of information that we don't know. And those stopgaps now I get to give to God, because God is now the base of the source of the information. So you actually strengthen my case more than you do yours. But that's fine. I'm actually happy with this. So I think we exchanged a lot.
The reason that I don't debate abiogenesis, the reason I don't debate abiogenesis is I'm not a biochem person.
Right.
I'm about to get my degree in organismal biology, so, but I don't know like anything about biochemistry. I took one organic chem class. I hated it. Sorry, professor, if you're watching. I don't know. It's not my field, and I'm not gonna try to argue about it.
All right, thanks so much for that. I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute apiece to give your closing thoughts on this.
I kind of just did.
All right, well then we can. If you want to just skip past yours, Jackson, do you have anything to add before we go on to Q&A?
Common ancestry wins. Let's do Q&A.
Sure. Okay.
All right, thanks so much for that. We do have a lot of questions. Let's skip to the first one. Thanks so much for your super chat, Germania, $5. Thanks. Says, honest question. If evolution was false, how does that prove or show evidence for an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God who drowned the whole world?
Yeah, I don't think we were really going into kind of like that evolution is false, just differences in opinions on it. And she wants to go into that. You know, I'm going to answer that final part about Noah's flood like I did the other night that everyone seemed to ignore. You know, Noah was this preacher of righteousness, warning everyone for 120 years, got to give a warning, set off a cut event. They didn't decide to listen. They didn't decide to get on the ark. So they died and their children died with them. Their blood is on their hands, not God's. It's not God's fault. Stop being a sycophant.
All right, thanks so much for that. Next, we have a £6 super chat from Rib. He said to call him Rib, and you would know who it was, Smokey Saint.
Yeah, I know who Rib is.
All right, says Smokey, why do you use insults as a form of response to arguments? Idiot, homo santa, disgusting are all just examples. Why not address the point?
Yeah. Oh, sure. No, I do address the points, and I also address the character of the people that are delivering them. I don't think I've been mean to you tonight, have I, Jackson? I think this was a pretty pleasant conversation.
No, I almost interjected because I was like, you didn't say anything. You didn't call me any names, or I actually thought this was a fine conversation.
Yeah, I thought we had a pretty darn good conversation. Yeah, Rib, the problem is that
absolutely.
You are a horrible person. and you have garbage characters, so you end up getting called out for it. So that's what you're talking about. So apologies if you didn't understand that earlier.
Wound.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Burn. We'll move on to Brian Stevens.
No, this is a fine conversation.
Brian Stevens, as a patron, has a question for Smokey. Says, give the chance. Would Smokey explain to Dr. Mary Schweitzer why her religious views are incongruent with her acceptance of evolution as the best science?
I don't think I'm familiar with who that is. So I apologize. If you want to come to one of my live streams and pitch that, we can maybe have a conversation and dissect that a little bit, because I don't really know. I think I know enough about her to give you an answer to that question.
All right, question from Elron Deer One says, is Milo arguing for or against the concept of white fragility in next week's debate? Oh, I'm sorry, I answered that in the live chat. I think that he's arguing against the concept of white fragility. All right, another 10-pound super chat from none other than Rib. Smokey, you say things such as, that's such a dumb argument, then go on to insult the person directly. If your opponent is making a dumb argument, surely it would be easy to debunk, no?
Rib, how triggered are you? Can you grow up? You're literally just sending money to try to talk about how ridiculous you are. Come on, bro. Like, seriously, we had a good chat tonight. You're coming and talking about why I'm being mean in chat. Like, do you realize how ridiculous you look?
All right, thanks for that response. We'll move on. Kent Hoven CPA says, did Smokey attend prestigious Patriot University?
No, I don't know what that is.
All right.
Can we not read insults?
Well, if somebody...
Is that a thing? What is that? What is that? Is that an insult? What is that?
Is it possible to insult?
Well, if
No, I don't mind the insults. I'm fine.
Yeah, that's like...
It's fine. I mean...
Well, if somebody pays for it, we typically read it. But... Yeah,
no, I mean, I got to think.
Okay, it's your show.
Most of these guys are intellectual degenerates anyway. It's no big issue. Go ahead.
Yeah, and most of them are insults. We typically read if somebody pays for one, even if it's
That's
for or
fine.
against.
I don't mind.
Yeah, I didn't think Smokey would care. That's why I was like, I'll go ahead. All right, James Downward had a question for both. What evidence would convince you to change your mind on universal common ancestry? I'd put the question... Okay, no, that's it. What evidence would cause you guys to change your mind?
I think I kind of said it in my opening, is that it's kind of a detriment to both sides that we're not able to get gene information out of fossils. If we could somehow figure out the technology for that, and that was able to give us some sort of definitive information one way or the other to really validate common ancestry, yeah, I'd be on board.
Dang, that was something that I forgot to mention. I actually wrote it. I was taking notes while you were talking. Are you familiar with paleogenomics?
I touched on that earlier today. I read a little article. I don't know how close attention I was paying to it, but if you want to send
there are very recent, and by recent I mean within the past, I think it's less than 500,000 years, that we can actually get some fragments of DNA from fossils. This has been done with Neanderthals. It's been done with Denisovans, but also with other animals. We have genes from mammoths.
I'm looking forward.
That's how we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elephas, actually, the Indian elephant is sister to mammoths. We have that for a couple of other, I think, some horses and a few other very recently extinct organisms, but that's about it.
Right. No, I'm really interested in the ones when we can pull back back to Cambrian times, because that really, it's the Cambrian level type of events, that really
I actually did 2 videos on the Cambrian, Cambrian explosion part 1 and 2. If you want to watch those, are on my channel.
Yeah, I'll consider that. Yeah.
Jackson, did you give the?
My response is either irreducible complexity, as Darwin once said, or the other one would be, I know Smokey's not a creationist, but in the baraminological kinds, if every group of organisms that was created separately had its own genetic code, maybe not necessarily something operated on DNA, something else operated on RNA, something else was on a totally different genetic code. If every organism, every created group were like that, that would be very strong evidence against evolution.
Thanks so much for that. We'll move on. Our next super chat's from Germania. Smokey, I understand you don't accept evolution. Do you have an argument for creation instead?
You understand wrongly, and that wasn't the debate. Like, again, to me, like, evolution is really just a component of like selective breeding. But at a certain point, we have a stopgap that naturalism can't seem to explain. It just kind of starts to assume. So that's where I start to have an issue with believing that we can just assume naturalistic mechanisms across the board.
All right, thanks so much for that response. $5 super chat from Coco Puffer says, coccyx, vestigial or no? Discuss.
Essential, necessary. Your guts will fall out. You will actually crap out your own guts if you don't have it.
So it's both. It is a vestigial structure, yes, but it is also necessary because it is a reduced form of what previously existed. And that has been the definition, or having a reduced function does not necessitate functionlessness. In this case, it doesn't. But because it is highly reduced from being a tail, then yes, it is still vestigial. That doesn't mean you should take it out. Please don't remove your coccyx.
All right, thanks so much for those responses. Next, we had a question from Luca Mendogna. Says to Smokey, what is the Clausius theorem, and tell us the unity of measure of entropy. I think he meant unit of measure of entropy.
Yeah, that I don't think I'm specifically familiar with. I'll go to Google later for you.
All right, thanks for that. We'll move on to Elronder1 says, Converse, are you also preparing to... Okay, so I think that's a question for me. So we'll move to James Downard. Says, Converse, question for Smokey. Do all ALUs in our genome contain the same or differing information? And what would a changed info look like?
Well, yeah, I think that's going a little more specific off of my generalized point at the beginning, which was about the degradation of the information or alteration from its integrity of its original form. And if that happens to carry with it functionality, it's because the functionality is carried with it inside the informational language that makes it functional. So that was kind of what I was saying. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying. What is he, ACL?
I'm sorry, he said, do all ALUs...
ALUs, they're primate-specific transposons.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's about as best of an answer I can probably give based upon my current knowledge. And again, guys, science isn't my typical, area of debate, but I'm trying to learn and focus on, like gathering all this information. So, of course, some of this more specific stuff, I'm still learning on this. My area of focus and study has been a lot more theology, history, culture, sociology, stuff like that.
All right. Thanks so much for that. We have a question. I'm sorry, I'm going to skip ahead to some of the later super chats, and then we'll come back to some of the questions. Tioga, $5 super chat. Thanks so much for that. Says, the reason we can turn a chicken into a dinosaur with CRISPR is because the chicken retains its old genes. Natural selection doesn't delete genes. So this is more of a comment, but unless you guys want to say something about that.
That's not technically true, actually. Natural selection can cause mutations can cause the deletion of genes, and those genes can be deleted or broken if they don't confer severe enough detriment to the organism that it just wipes it out. So that's not technically true. They contain vestiges. Chickens contain vestiges of their dinosaur ancestors, but that doesn't mean natural selection doesn't always weed out certain genes. There's this whole process of canalization in different organisms, especially if they become parasites.
All right. Thanks so much for that. $10 super chat from none other than Jungle Jargon. Somebody we've known for quite a long time on YouTube. Says,
hey, JJ.
Why does Jackson Wheat think billions of bits of programming without mistakes are from making mistakes which then have to be selected for in very limited time and space, relatively speaking.
Did he ask why? Because
he says, why does Jackson...
One thing I wouldn't say, why do mutations happen and why does natural selection occur? Because only so many organisms can exist in an environment and compete for the limited resources. And mutations happen. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much for that response. We'll move on. We have a super chat from $4.99 from Dana McWhite. Says, can we have a debate that explains law to converse contender? The other day we were arguing the other day in a chat about law. Listen, if you see me in a chat and I'm arguing a point that nobody else in the room believes is the case, it's typically because I come into a room and I hear echoes, and it's just in my nature to kind of like throw a stick in somebody's like spokes of their wheel when they're like cruising. Sorry about that. It's just my nature to be to break up the echoes in a chamber. Sorry. All right. Now we'll move on to our next question from Germania, $5. Thanks so much. I have no faith in scientists, but I have faith in a book written over thousands of years by ancient sheep herders. Makes sense. Do you have any response to that?
I do not believe in the conjecture of religious sophists who are sitting in their positions saying that this is what we have to believe. Now, if you are one of those people who likes to believe only what you are told to believe, continue to do so. But I've looked at the evidence and I've digested my reality with the most sensical, logical, probable definition that I possibly can. So your conjecture is basically just arbitrary, and you're probably basing your beliefs based upon consensus, which I think is just ridiculous. So.
All right, thanks so much for that response. Next, we have a $5 super chat from Mitchell. Haven't seen Mitchell in a while. Question for Jackson. Is your facial hair a random evolutionary change to attract the opposite sex, or is it a trait via intelligent design to reproduce? What do you say?
It's both.
I'm sorry. You're fading. I couldn't hear you because you roboted.
Yep, my stream. Yeah, my internet is sucky. I said maybe it's both.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks so much for that response. Our next question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you on that one. Our next question, super chat, is from Dana McWhite again, $4.99. Thanks so much for the contribution. Says, James running around with all his sock accounts for Steve McClazy. All right, thanks so much for that. That's probably the case, but can't confirm or deny. All right, Rib is back with 5 pounds or quid, however they say. Smokey, you can't help but dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge, can you?
Dodgeball reference. Love it. Rib, you know what? Empty assertions, useless. You have to make actual arguments. I think after 3 debates, you would have figured that out by now. I guess you just don't have any.
All right. Thanks so much for that response. Our next $10 super chat. Thanks, Matthew Steele. Very generous. Says, Jackson, would you please educate Smokey on what the bare minimum of evidence it would take to disprove the theory of evolution as the only working explanation for biology on Earth?
That's a tough question.
Well, I mean, as I said on my thing, if irreducible complexity were true, that'd be pretty good evidence against evolution. If every created group had its own non-overlapping set of genetic material, that'd be really good evidence. We just don't have that.
Can I have a quick follow-up? Just to piggyback real quick. What do you think would be viable evidence for irreducible complexity? Or like, do you think that there's something that you've seen that kind of defeats it, irreducible complexity?
So in all the instances of irreducible complexity that I'm aware of, it's always some feature where we can either see, well, it's typically something soft, something like a cellular component or an organ, and so it's not going to have a fossil record, but we are going to find genetic evidence for evolving in its close relatives. The flagellum is one of the is Michael Behe's example in Darwin's Black Box. But the flagellum, or the genes that make up the flagellum, are homologs of each other. It seems like it's a series of duplication events, and all the proteins that are involved in the flagellum are present elsewhere in the cell doing other things, but it seems like they were co-opted from their jobs for a new job. The blood clotting system, there are many variants of the blood clotting system. We can see that there are proteins in other organisms that don't have blood clotting systems, but they have the proteins that we have co-opted. The eye, I did a whole video on the eye. So,
we could do a whole debate
I guess what I would say is
we could do a whole debate on everything you just said, but that's totally cool. I want to just let you answer the question. Sorry.
If there were no genes, if like there were no set of genes that were common regulating the evolution of eyes, for instance, just as my example, if every organism had like every species had like a different gene for the eye, I think that'd be pretty darn difficult to explain.
All right, thanks so much for that response. We have another $5 super chat from Just a Walking Fish. Says, please explain the following terms with Smokey going first. Allele, phylogeny, locus, selection pressures, and the textbook definition of evolution.
Oh boy. Well, try to work backwards from there, I think. Let's see, the textbook definition of evolution is the changes of alleles in a population over time. Alleles, I believe, is the actual genetic information that actually changes over time. What were the other ones?
Locus, selection pressures, and phylogeny.
Loki's,
well, sort of.
Intersections, the points of the genome, specific points of the genome, I believe. And what was the other one?
Phylogeny and
phylogeny, that's just a classification tree of common ancestry.
And selection pressures.
That would be the things that are, I believe, pressured upon natural selection to cause changes in the environment that would cause changes on the species, I believe.
All right, Jackson, you want to add to that, or we can move on?
You did pretty well. You did pretty well on them. The only one that I say you got most of them. You did pretty well. You got the definition of evolution right. That's great. The only one I would change is allele. Alleles are the versions of the genes. Like if you have a gene for eye color, but there are different alleles. You could have blue eyes or green eyes or brown eyes. But other than that, good, very good.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thanks so much for that accurate response. Marcus Aurelius comes from the past, I almost said future, to the future, with the question for Smokey. Would he agree that we don't need absolute proof to make an inductive argument to the best explanation as per the scientific method? I believe that would be abductive. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's using terms there correctly. It's kind of a hard question to answer, actually. I think what I would do is I would want to rely upon the best argument method available with the available information and draw inference from that. So the idea is that I'm looking for the best arguments based upon available data, but I'm not looking for arguments that are specifically leaning one way or the other. I'm basically looking for agnostic arguments and trying to discern information through that, because I do want to believe what's true, and I always have. So, that's certainly part of my methodology.
All right. Thanks so much for that response. We'll move on to our next question from $5 Super Chat from Mitchell. For Jackson, how did the first living cells acquire the information to reproduce at random without undergoing the ultimate inbreeding problem?
He already said God.
Well, yeah. I mean, for one thing, I said God, but also they wouldn't be inbreeding because they were prokaryotes, so there's no sexual reproduction going on, therefore no inbreeding. But yeah, you're right. I already said God, so there you go.
There we go.
All right.
So
Thanks.
it's solved on both accounts.
Both problems. We had a good debate tonight, man. It was awesome.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Mitchell. Now we move on to another $10 super chat from Matthew Steele, a debater from just the other night. I believe he was on. He said, Smokey, sir, can you provide a basic definition and usage of a working scientific theory? Thank you, sir. I mean, bro, sir.
Well, is he just like wanting to quiz me, like on all these terms? Like, isn't he the one that sent me all those different terms for me to define? What is this, Matthew? Like, are you trying to flex something because you're sitting in chat in front of Google? And I've already admitted that this isn't really a typical field that I do a whole bunch of study into, and you're trying to leverage something against me because you're a petty person. Well, great, dude. I apparently need to have Google in front of me next time, like you, and just sit inside chat and grill you with questions.
All right, thanks so much for that response. We have a $5 super chat from Sunflower. Says, at Johannes Kolsky, I may have pronounced that wrong.
Yeah, I know you. Yeah.
Okay, has been humiliated beyond belief. He was wrong about P53, and then he invoked the MSV from CT scans to illustrate X-ray radioactivity.
What are we talking about?
I don't know. Did you? If you wanted anybody wanted to respond to any of that, it's fine.
Did any of that come up tonight?
I don't know. I figured it was maybe some type of inside thing that I had no clue about.
Jackson, do you mention anything about that? I haven't mentioned P53 is a papyrus, which has to do with something from textual criticism,
Sure.
but I haven't mentioned that in like.
I was thinking he was referring to the gene P53.
Oh, it's P53
the tumor suppressor gene, but no.
I think papyrus 53 catalog
We didn't talk
textual criticism.
about any.
Yeah.
Of that. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, he must have been talking about the gene because he goes on to talk about.
I don't know. We didn't talk about any of that
scan.
stuff. So.
All right, we'll move forward. We have another super chat from none other than the same person, Sunflower. Thank you so much for $10. Very generous. Says Jackson, the concept of screwed up designs doesn't make sense if you consider these animals simply an evolutionary stepping stone or necessary byproduct when moving toward the end goal, humans.
What?
I don't know if I even understood
what the
that,
question
actually.
was.
He says
Read that one more time,
yeah.
Anders.
He says Jackson.
I didn't use the.
He says the concept.
I didn't use the argument from bad design.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nah, he was just saying the concept of screwed up designs doesn't make sense if you consider these animals simply an evolutionary stepping stone or necessary byproduct when moving toward the end goal, humans. I think he's saying like, hey, the I think you said
What?
something. I think you said something earlier, either about vestigial organs or maybe it was wisdom teeth or something like that, where you were trying to say like, hey, well, we didn't need these, and
well,
he
I
made
mean, I mean, we talked about some things like the whale pseudogenes for smelling, but I was using more of that, or I was using that more to show that there are these genetic commonalities between whales and artiodactyls. There are some sort of interesting philosophic problems with the bad design argument, which is why I didn't use it.
all right.
But I don't really understand the question. So I don't know.
All right, thanks so much for that. Let's see. I'm checking the live chat because Matthew still says, I didn't ask the question that Smokey is whining about, and he didn't answer a very simple question. So maybe we'll try.
Okay.
Maybe we'll try and maybe I'll try and
Yeah,
revisit
if
it.
you want to read it again, I'll try to take a crack at it. What was it? Something about, can I name an evolutionary theory that exists or something?
So It's no. It was can you provide a basic definition and usage of a working scientific theory?
Sure, I suppose the theory of gravity. We know that gravity operates and based upon mass. So relative to the amount of mass, gravity will be affected. So I guess that's one operationable, testable, provable theory. Sure.
Okay, and if that wasn't it, please let us know. And he's already spent $20, so hey, we appreciate that. I mean, not that I'm getting any of it, but hey, it supports the channel.
But I'm willing to contribute.
All right, Mitchell, another $5 super chat. This guy's a big spender. He says, JW, a jet ski and an ATV require a spark plug to operate. If not by common design, what intelligence created the elements for that spark plug to exist?
I don't think any of the things we talked about were human objects, and everything we talked about undergoes reproduction, unlike refrigerators, microwaves, cars, skateboards. So, moot analogy.
All right, thanks so much for that response. Bruce Wayne, 5 CAs, whatever that is, with a super sticker that has somebody pumping iron, and it says, keep it up. Thanks so much, Bruce, for that. We will keep it up. Mark Reed, 5 A's, whatever an A is, says, Smokey, we are pointing out ad hominems are logical fallacies. Are you using it to deflect from addressing arguments?
Okay, it's only an ad hominem if I use it to defeat the argument. If one of my arguments is, you are low character trash, and I've demonstrated through pointing out things about your character and your failures as a person, it's no longer an ad hominem. It's simply a conclusion of an observation. So you're just mistaking terms because you want to be triggered.
All right, thanks so much for that. Our next super chat is from Citrafreda Sarabia, $10. Thank you so much. Citrafreda Sarabia is always in the chat. Says, at Jackson, if you accept conversion theory, that threw me off there. If you accept conversion theory, are you saying there's something else besides evolution guiding the process, in which if we rewind the tape, some things are bound to happen the same? Why not ID? I guess intelligent design.
So that's kind of several issues all wrapped together. I don't think convergent evolution
one for you to focus on, because I think there was one part of that was really important, which is the idea that I'm sorry, read it one more time, Converse.
How can you tell
if you accept conversion theory? If you accept
the
conversion theory, are you saying there's something else besides evolution guiding the process, in which if we rewind the tape, some things are bound to happen the same? Why not intelligent design?
And I think the idea, as I understood it in evolutionary theory as it stood for a long time, if we wound back the clock to the beginning of...
So that's really two questions together.
Right, but if I think I understood what he's saying. If we wound back the clock to the origin of life, then then we let it run forward again, then it would manifest as something completely different. It wouldn't evolve the same. But the idea of the convergent evolution means that it probably would have and should have. Like, it's almost essential. You know what I mean?
Not really. Okay. So some things can convergent evolution happens a lot of times because you get different organisms, but they're going at the same problem. If, for instance, you have wings developing because these organisms have to fly. There are a bunch of different organisms that look like ants because maybe organism or something that's eating bugs will maybe leave you alone if you look like an ant because they'll think there are lots of you. Prehensile tails are useful for living in trees. So that's the selective pressure driving them, having an extra limb to help balance you in the tree. Does that mean, so convergent happens obviously, but does that mean life, if we replayed the tape of life, to use Gould's analogy, would things turn out the same? I would say heck no. If you read Wonderful Life, maybe some things wouldn't, or some things have tendencies to kind of go down the same paths. And I just finished Neil Shubin's new book, He talks about how mutations in salamander hands kind of end up, there's kind of a set of bones that are more likely to fuse than others. And this happens a lot in these salamanders. So yeah, sure, maybe some things would happen over and over again. But you also have to remember mutations are largely random, but this is also dependent on the environment. These are mutations in particular environments, and environments are dependent on wind patterns and climatic changes, and they're dependent on how the continents collide into each other, and whether volcanoes are produced or rift valleys. So there's loads and loads of contingencies that are going into this. So I would say no. I would still say convergent evolution happens. Does that mean everything is constrained? No.
All right, thanks so much for that response. So we'll move on to our next super chat. George Bond, 5 A's, whatever the A is. Question for Jackson: how do you verify co-option?
I'm sorry, I missed. My internet was cutting out again.
Sure.
Did you?
George Bond.
I heard Jackson.
Yes, he says, question for Jackson: how do you verify co-option?
So, when you look at these organisms and they have the same genes, they have homologous genes, a lot of times co-option occurs because you have a duplication. So you have the gene, but it's been duplicated. But it has also mutations, and these mutations are slightly affecting how it operates. I mentioned the case of Geisha earlier. Geisha is a duplicate of this gene, mother of Geisha. They have enough homology, we can confirm this gene originated from this other gene because Geisha is only in this one group, but mother of Geisha is in this whole group. And so that's how you can be relatively assured that this is part of this subset. But co-option occurs because it's developing mutations and you have selective pressures on this organism. And so the mutations are causing it to do something slightly different than it was originally. And if that is favorable in that environment, natural selection can favor it to do that more or do that better.
All right, thanks so much for that response.
Generally how co-option occurs.
Thank you so much. Sunflower, again, $2 super chat, says that was in reference to whales having smell genes. I guess his last question, which was the concept of screwed up design doesn't make sense if you consider these animals simply an evolutionary stepping stone to necessary byproduct when moving toward an end goal, humans. Maybe that was...
But whales are not part of our lineage, so moot point, I guess.
Well, they technically are. I mean, they kind of...
Whales aren't, no.
Like all the way back at a certain point, we had a common ancestor.
We had a common ancestor who was part of it, but that would have presumably had functioning genes as the other artiodactyls related to whales are still, they operate where they cell gene working, but whales lost that along their lineage, not in our common ancestor. So they're not.
Well, but I think that was kind of what I was drawing out of the assumption in that, but it's okay. No, let's move on. I'm sorry. I actually have another stream I'm supposed to do here soon anyway. So
all right, thanks so much for that. We'll move back to Korag Nightwolf's question. Question for Smokey: if the diversity of life on Earth is not well explained by evolution and biology and chemistry, what would be the alternative and what would be the evidence?
Well, see, and I think everyone kind of seems to just keep mischaracterizing me. I mean, read it one more time. I can pretty much only respond to one part of that question. One more time, Conrad.
He says, if the diversity of life on Earth is not well explained by evolution and biology and chemistry, what would be the alternative and what would be the evidence?
Well, no, I think diversity is kind of explained. I mean, certainly speciation to a certain level, I think is explained by evolution, as it's called evolution, which is the changes of those alleles in a population over time as there are certain pressures placed upon a population. It's basically like being forced to selectively breed. I just don't think I have sufficient scientific evidence to believe that there's a naturalistic mechanism behind all of that. And for me, I have to look at it in a very practical approach, that some of this is just conjecture. It's good conjecture, it's scientific conjecture, but at the end of the day, it is still that. And our gaps in the knowledge, to me, don't attribute us to be able to just assume naturalistic mechanisms by automatically.
All right, thanks so much for that. Tioga is right. Hit the like button if you're a good person. And for people,
Amen. Hit the like button.
And for people who aren't good people, feel free to hit the dislike button. All right, Sunflower, another $2 super chat says, I said stepping stone or necessary byproduct. I guess this is kicking it back to the whale's smell genes.
So is it used? Okay, so is it used? I guess the idea is it used in its process of evolution, or is it just completely defunct? Is that?
I mean, they were at one point. I mean, they were used at one point, but they are pseudogenes now. They've become pseudogenized, such that they still have the mammal receptors, the artiodactyl receptors, but they're broken.
Do we know
that was just that?
And a quick question, too, maybe Jackson, just real quick. Do you know they have no function at all anymore whatsoever, or that just their function has changed?
As far as I'm aware, they're at the very least highly reduced, and in some cases they're not functioning at all.
Okay. I might have to look into that more. Okay.
I'm not familiar with the exact pseudogenes. I'm sure there's literature on it.
No, yeah, it's actually compelled me enough to go look into it for sure. Yeah.
All right, thanks for the response.
Sure, yeah.
Another $5 super chat from Area 85 Restorations. Sounds like a cool car restoration shop. Probably not, but says, can creationism make novel, accurate, testable predictions of future data? If not, then nothing you said tonight amounts to anything. Evolution can, by the way.
Well, there are creationist models that end up doing the same thing and using a lot of the same data, and also creating predictable scientific models. So, I mean, I don't think that's a completely aware statement to be making. I don't have any off the top of my head, but if you would like to come to one of my live streams, I can probably pull up some references for you.
All right, thanks so much for that. We're going to try and practice brevity, and we will try and get through the rest pretty quickly. All right, a question from K No says, can Smokey provide anything that is better explained by supernatural than natural in a way that makes verifiable predictions and can be falsified? It's kind of the same question, really.
Yeah, it's kind of the same question. Yeah, the idea is that you guys might be making unrealistic demands while thinking that your position is probably better than it is. And generally, this comes with a lack of appreciation of what you're asserting and what your presuppositions are that you're using that you don't feel you have to justify. So that's probably one of those things better unpacked and dealt with in an actual live stream session.
All right, thanks so much. James Downard says, a necessary chronology clarification question for both. When was the first life on Earth, and what was it?
Oh gosh, what was it? The first kind of very basic life was what, 1 billion years after the beginning of Earth or something. Jackson, maybe you can help me with that. I'm not 100%.
It is estimated the earliest fossils come from about, I think, 3.77 billion years, and the Earth is estimated to be about 4.6 billion years old. So
it's like sulfur eating, or something like that. Is that what they were?
Yeah, methanogenic archaeans and the stromatolite bacteria, and so that's really that's maybe like 600 or so million years after the Earth first formed, and maybe 200 or so million years after the start of life, somewhere around there.
All right, thanks so much for that. Let me move over this little icon here. All right, Marcus Aurelius joins us again. Took Doc's vehicle back to the future and says, question for Smokey, just like microevolution and macroevolution differ at scale, does he believe that enough inches won't make a yard?
Yeah, no, I think yeah, that's not a good comparison or analogy for me because again, you're just kind of assuming that these types of things could converge, and and that's fine if we had sufficient evidence for it. I don't think we do, and it's one of those things where if you're making a claim to me that all life, all of the genome information of all the diversity of all the species that we see is simply a product of error on top of error on top of error over time, then to me that is an extraordinary claim. And I don't think that the scientific community has been capable of providing sufficient evidence for that claim. And the local, isolated type of speciation we see, and on top of that, morphology from ancient fossils, to me is not sufficient evidence to make that claim.
All right. Thanks so much for that response. Next question from James Downard says, question for Smokey, if it doesn't come up, converse, what is his position on the members of the horse evolution sequence? Are they related or not?
Yeah, I don't think I have an issue believing that the horses are related, and I don't see a reason why I should. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not an issue for me. I mean, I would tend to expect, like, and this is from my kind of model worldview, maybe to fit it a little bit. Like, to me, I don't have an issue believing that there was some sort of hooved progenitor, to these horses, that maybe we don't even know what it is, that possibly even had a couple other species come from it. I don't have an issue with that. The idea is that to me, I see a massive amount of evolutionary complex diversity and specificity over a relatively short period of time. And that to me leads me to believe that when I see these shared components, just like an example, the pedactyl limb, which can be used for a hoof, a hand, a foot, a wing, a fin, anything else, this specific type of component carried across all the creatures, while some would argue, well, this is, obviously something of common ancestry because they all look similar. But to me, the same data is just as much digestible as common design because each one of these things, while looking the same, have been redesigned for a very different purpose. And that to me screams out intelligence, function, and intention. So, and the things I've seen through the abiogenesis models as well help confirm that for me. So it's just the idea of digesting kind of the collection of evidence altogether to see what's the most plausible. That's all.
All right. Thanks so much for that. Our next question from Dunning-Kruger says, a question for both. What, if any, falsifies your position? We already kind of went through that, right?
Yeah, I think we kind of did that. I mean, I'd give another one. I'd give a general one for a falsification of the existence of God would probably be sufficient evidence for, or even sufficient philosophical reasoning for the eternality of the universe. That would be one of those big ones. And I even know there's quite a few scientific-minded Christians who would probably say the exact same thing.
All right, thanks so much for that. K No ask, if humans and octopi eyes were designed, why octopi have eyes designed better than we do, having optical nerves connected inside the eyeball and having blind spot is worse? Anyone? Bueller? I'm not sure.
I think that was for Smokey.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that was for Smokey.
Okay, I'm sorry. Read it one more time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. It says, if human and octopi eyes were designed, why octopi have eyes designed better than we do, having optical nerves connected inside the eyeball and having blind spot is worse?
Well, no, they have designs that are specifically essential utility for them, and that's what tells me, that they're designed. Like, our eyes would burn out if we didn't have it behind. The octopus do not deal with direct sunlight like we do. So there's clearly
Yes, they do.
Well, no, you had said so yourself. They have a difference in terms of their structure to how they actually filter or receive sunlight.
It's just a difference, but it's not like the optical nerve is protecting our photoreceptors. It's just The light passes
But I'm
over it.
saying their structure, their specific structure is orientated specifically for their environment, yet it still carries the similar design. It's like saying, okay, it wouldn't be able to ever be specifically.
We have the same designs as fish.
No, but okay, but the point is, and this is what was
Because they're vertebrates.
danced over, was that this is what was kind of danced over that I was trying to talk about. Of course, they have those similar functions. They have those similar, as you had said, they were very morphologically similar, but they didn't function the same way. And I said,
Superficially, yes.
right. And I said they're superficially the same. And I said, yeah, that's get it. That's fine. That's great because it's in a different environment. Clearly, it's an underwater environment. They're dealing with the reception of light completely different than we do. So it's going to be a different.
Well,
that's what would be expected.
Well, so are fish.
A design paradigm.
Well, here's the thing. Fish, we have the same eye type as fish, and yet they are also underwater experiencing light.
Well, they're not.
So I don't think that's.
Well, the fish are. Again, that's another.
They're in our group. We're both vertebrates,
exactly.
And so I don't.
Well, that's
so
what
I'm not really
saying.
understanding
They're
their position on it.
Well, again, that was back to my whole point. They're not even really related to the squid or the octopus or the cephalopods yet. Again, that same type of equipment with a completely different design function. That was part of my argument I was trying to make.
All right, thanks so much for that. We'll move on to our next question from me. How do we have over 200 people watching the entire time and like 80 likes? Let's go, guys. Let's go. All right.
Don't like me. They just hate me. It's okay.
No, that's all right. All right.
That's awesome.
Okay. James Downard again. Got a lot of questions. Says, Converse, what works have you relied on for your understanding of eye origins? I'm guessing that's for you, Smokey.
Understanding of the understanding I have so far is that we have no understanding of. I mean, we have a conjecture, we have a hypothesis. I believe I saw some paper in a Nature magazine, something about a nub in some sort of primordial creature that turned into a ball socket that may have turned into something more complex. But there's all these areas of assumptions in between and up to that point, and really it's just conjecture to me. To me, the best evidence of this organ is that it is irreducibly complex, just like our series of systems in our body. All of them are incredibly complex, incredibly essential, and all codependent. So which one evolved first? Well, they couldn't have. They all had to evolve together simultaneously. And that's one of those things when you look at them.
You're right.
When you look at them together as a complex system, not just individually, but actually, redundance upon each other, that to me is one of those design component things that makes sense to me. Because I don't see how evolution, evolves all those things separately to ultimately end up working together. And I don't know any workable natural.
Except it didn't.
Explain that.
It didn't.
All right.
And we don't think that.
Well, okay.
If you actually look at the literature, I agree with you. When you say they all evolved together, you are correct. They did. They didn't evolve separately. It was a concert of these things together. You're absolutely correct.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much for that. We are almost up to 100 likes now. Thank you. But if you didn't like it, we don't really have enough dislikes either. So, all right. So to move on to our next question, Samuel Sorry, we just had somebody
How many of these questions are we doing?
So many questions.
there are a ton of questions tonight. If we want to, let's just be brief. We'll run through them real quick, and we'll get through like 10 at a time.
Well, I mean, they keep coming.
All right,
it seems they keep coming.
Well,
okay, can we cut it off in like 10 minutes? Is that
yeah,
fair?
Sure.
We'll do that. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll try and get to them before that if we just answer them real quick, okay? All right, so Samuel Powell says, Converse, who is Smokey Saint's own patron saint?
I don't have one.
All right, thanks so much. Marcus Aurelius says, question for Smokey, would he agree that we don't need absolute proof to make an inductive argument? Okay, so we've already asked that question.
Yep. Yes, we don't need absolute proof for an inductive argument. Yeah, okay. We're good.
For Smokey, describe, well, nope, I think we've already been through that one too. Let's see. All right. K No says, if life is designed and human is special, why not make a protostome? It would make it obvious that humans are not a result of evolution but creation?
It's not obvious that we're a result of that at all. We can't even decide ultimately in the biological community whether we came from Neanderthals or Neanderthals came from us. I mean,
Neither. We share a common ancestor.
well,
We have their genome.
Well, by the way, Jackson, I think that's one of those things that's on the table of debate.
I'm familiar with the literature in this regard.
I spoke with Erica on this debate topic. Maybe you should discuss that with her because
And she agrees with me.
Well,
We're not descended from Neanderthals.
No. And if we don't know, then we should not be making the type of assumptions we are about
The
that.
evidence is largely in favor of us not being descended from them and them not being descended from us, but us sharing a common ancestor.
That's your pure assumption. I'm sorry.
All right, thanks so much for that.
I encourage you to look at the literature.
There's literature on both sides. Which literature would you want me to look at? I've seen stuff on both sides. What do you want?
Do a survey. Do a survey of the literature.
Oh, and take consensus? Yeah.
Sure, why not? See what the evidence is in favor of one. See what the evidence is in favor of the other.
I judge things based on arguments, not consensus. I don't.
That's what I just said. I just said see what the evidence is for one side and see what the evidence is for the other side.
I did, and I just elaborated that. Anyway, let's move on. We're wasting time. Let's move on.
You have looked at the literature?
On both sides.
All right.
On both. And there's good arguments on both sides. You get to choose arbitrarily which one you want. Don't tell me which one I have to choose. That's not on you. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go.
All right. Thanks so much for that. A $1 super chat from none other than
I'm trying
Brenda.
to keep current with the literature.
All right. Thanks so much for that. Brenda, thanks for your super chat. We will move on to our next question. Dave Garr, statement for Smokey that he will like. I made mesquite tea yesterday by soaking my chunks overnight. Not sure what that means.
Oh, yeah, it's outstanding. He probably put his mesquite chips inside the water to soak them overnight because I told him to do that for his brisket he was making. I turned out awesome, bro.
Iron Charioteer, thanks so much. Says, ask Smokey, has he been to the Ark Park or Dino Adventureland yet?
You know what? I was only in Kentucky briefly for a very, very unpleasant stay, and I had thought about it, but no, I did not. I did not go see the park. I personally don't think it's. Oh man, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this. I don't think that the Ark Park is doing the witness of Christianity a lot of Christians these days.
All right, thanks so much for that. Iron Charioteer says again, Norma Stitz has proven that human growth hormone proves evolution. Are you aware?
Which one? Pretty sure there are different human growth hormones.
All right, thanks so much.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree necessarily. I'm just saying more specific, I guess.
Brenda, okay, thanks so much for that. Brenda had a $1 super chat. It did not send the question. But Brenda, if you just tag me, I will ask your question. No problem.
I guarantee it was most likely something hateful if it's the same Brenda I'm thinking of.
All right, we'll see. I'd be patiently waiting for that. All right, Amy Newman, thanks so much for your question for Smokey on the subject of how animals came about. How did God create each separate animal and their differences? Is this process repeatable within science?
That particular process wouldn't be, and neither would it be on the naturalistic side. It's one of the things that we have to deal with in terms of inductive or abductive reasoning. And we just need to operate off of reasonable models that make the most sense. That's really the only thing any of us can do. And this is why we do these debates, to challenge each other and see those types of probabilities and reasons.
All right, thanks so much for that. Brenda tagged Modern Day Debate with her question. Let me just find it here. I just seen it come in. All right, there it is. By what criteria do you use to distinguish design from non-design?
That's a weird question. Yeah, I mean, the specificity and complexity running contrary to the laws of entropy and the tendency of things to not fall into order, but to go into disorder. Leads me to believe that there is a sign of some type of intelligence. So when I come across something very complex and specific that operates like it's been, attuned, coded, and manifested by intelligence, yeah, I'm going to draw that conclusion. That's just reasonable to me.
All right, thank you for that. Our next question we only have a couple more left. Alex Gordon says, question for Smokey. Smokey, you had a really productive and interesting debate with Jackson tonight. Why did Skylar and T-Jump get such a seething Smokey while Jackson got a charmer?
Well, because they're very dishonest people and they're very dishonest debaters, and it's sad that most of their followers can't notice it. Skylar has a tendency to finish people's answers for them because he only has the intellectual capacity to handle straw men. And then he gets to Q&A and he doesn't even allow you to answer your own questions. He has to jump in at the end and finish answering them for you. So he's just a very rude, volatile, petty, nonsensical little man. And T-Jump just says things that make no sense at all, like that the universe can emerge from basically he said life could emerge with no universe at all. Once you're willing to say such ridiculous, stupid things like that, yeah, you're going to basically get classified as a clown in my book.
All right, so thanks so much for those burns.
Yeah, it's kind of wacky.
We had a $2 A or 2 A's come in from General E. Shady. Sorry, I'm just not getting to that. Creation, in quotations, my holy book says evolution equals evidence.
Yeah, that I don't even know what to do with that. That's just the hillbilly hick.
That wasn't even a statement. Next.
Really, so try to be clever. That's great, lovely.
All right, we have like 3 more questions.
Oh my gosh, you just said 2 like 2 ago. Like really?
I said a few more. All right. Okay. General Balzac says I had to dislike because I found out. Okay, so that was just a comment about. Okay.
Oh, go and read it. Was it offensive? Go and read it.
No. It's just he says I had to dislike because I found out about the prerequisites for liking. So, but FT, yeah, being a good person. All right. Mitchell says, was Galileo included in the consensus of his time?
I don't know. Was he?
No, he wasn't. No.
There are lots of myths about that whole event.
Definitely was.
Last question. Iron Charioteer asks, ask Smokey, why does he get so upset and rude with people once they go against the echo chamber circle jerk on your channel?
We've already been over this one.
I don't know. These guys are just so, you guys are so triggered, and I don't understand. I do open mics every week. I have it where you guys can come in, challenge me, ask questions, even be the vitriolic, nonsensical clowns that you want to be. You can come and do any of it, and I will put you in your place. But instead, you want to come in and make noise and side chat, and I have no respect for people like that. People need to be able to stand behind what they say and defend their points. And if you can't do it, you're just nonsensical noise, and I can disregard you for the irrelevant garbage you are.
Awesome.
There you go. Fair enough.
We're at the end of the debate. Thank you so much for everybody that was in the chat for coming out. Everybody that's going to watch this afterwards, thank you for hitting that like button because I know you're going to. New subscribers, hit that subscribe button, and we will be coming up with some great material in the next few weeks. It keeps getting better as time goes on. I also want to thank the contenders, Jackson and Smokey. Was a very calm and collected conversation. I think a lot of people probably learned a lot tonight. And thank you, Deanna Rosewater, for subscribing just now. And with that, I just want to lastly say, if there's anything that you want to see on the channel or you want to be a debater on the channel, please send me an email at conversecontender@gmail.com. Because James in his doctorate program right now, he's being so overwhelmed with emails. So please send those over to me. And everybody make sure and send James some flowers or something on Twitter to thank him for all he does. All right. Thanks so much for everybody being here. And as usual, keep sifting the reasonable from the unreasonable.